July 20, 1969, the lunar module of the Apollo 11 mission landed on the moon. Astronauts Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin were in it. After the landing, Neil Armstrong tried to open the door to get down on the moon. It wasn't easy opening this door due to high pressure, but he successfully opened it after a little struggle. Then he tried to get down to the moon in his heavy spacesuit. The exit wasn't spacious, so by mistake, he hit the top, and a piece of the lunar module broke off. Neither of them was aware of this because of the lack of air. The sound didn't travel. They didn't hear any sound. But this broken piece was very crucial. It was the ascent engine arming switch. Without this switch, their lunar module couldn't take off again, and they couldn't return to Earth. Unaware of this, Neil Armstrong got out and stepped on the moon's surface. He became the first man to step on the moon. One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. But did it actually happen? Today, more than 50 years later, many people refuse to believe that humans had gone to the moon. People cook up theories of their own to claim that the entire Apollo 11 mission was a farce put up by America, that they filmed the scenes on Earth and lied to the world. How else do you explain the flag fluttering without air? What's the truth to it? Come, let's try to understand this story in today's video.
20 seconds and counting. 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff. 32 minutes past the hour. Liftoff on Apollo 11.
Friends, you'd be surprised to know, the real reason why Apollo 11 mission was planned was a war. Specifically speaking, the Cold War, fought between America and the Soviet Union. Both countries were engaged in a space race. In 1957, the Soviet Union became the first country to launch the first artificial satellite. It was named Sputnik, and it was the first man-made object to be placed in Earth's orbit. The American government was shocked to see the Soviets getting ahead. Months later, in 1958, America launched their satellite as well. But 3 years later, in 1961, America got another shock. Soviet cosmonaut Yuri Gagarin was the first person to go to space. The Soviets beat America once again. 1 week later, the then President of America, John F. Kennedy, wrote a letter to the Vice President dated April 20th, 1961. He asked the Vice President how they could beat the Soviet Union, asking if there was another space program that could be achieved quickly that would produce dramatic results and give them a lead in the race. He got the answer some days later because he soon realized that the next big step would be to send humans to the moon.
Before this decade is out, of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the Earth.
Over the next 5 years, he provided $7 to $9 billion in additional funding to the space program. The entire space agency was engaged in fulfilling this one aim. Mere months later, the tests began. First, they tested the rockets that would be used to leave the Earth. Then the heat shields of the command modules were tested. Then the propulsion system of the service module. Between 1963 to 1967, many unmanned tests were carried out. The rockets didn't carry any humans during the tests. In February 1967, the plan the first manned tests, a test in which astronauts will go up to space in the rockets. This was the Apollo 1 mission. But during the tests on Earth, on January 27, 1967, the cabin caught on fire, and the 3 astronauts preparing to go to space died in the fire. After this painful event, NASA didn't lose courage. Instead, it continued further testing. Apollo 4, Apollo 5, and Apollo 6 were all unmanned missions. For further testing, in October 1968, Apollo 7 mission was launched, and once again they attempted to send humans to space. This was successful. Only 2 months later, in December 1968, Apollo 8 mission was launched in which 3 astronauts were sent near the moon. 3 months later, in March 1969, Apollo 9 mission was launched. In this, the lunar module was tested, the part of the spacecraft that was actually going to land on the moon. And 2 months after that, in May 1969, was the Apollo 10 mission. In this mission, 3 astronauts had to do almost everything for practice that was supposed to be done in Apollo 11 mission, except actually landing on the moon. After all these tests, finally, on July 16, 1969, Apollo 11 mission was launched.
1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
3 astronauts were a part of this mission. 38-year-old Commander Neil Armstrong. He led this mission. The pilot of the command module, Michael Collins, and the pilot of the lunar module, Edwin Buzz Aldrin. To launch this spacecraft, a Saturn V rocket was to be used. Before the launch, the rocket was loaded with 1 million gallons of kerosene, liquid oxygen, and liquid hydrogen. The weight of this rocket was 3 million kilograms. With its help, the spacecraft reached Earth's orbit. It took less than 10 minutes to reach the orbit. Then they made about 1.5 revolutions around the Earth. After traveling for almost 400,000 kilometers, the Apollo 11 spacecraft reached Moon's orbit. Here, it was supposed to be split into two. The command and service module separated from the lunar module. Michael Collins was in the command module. This part of the spacecraft was nicknamed Columbia, and the lunar module was nicknamed the Eagle. Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin were in it. The thing is that the command and service module was tasked to remain in the Moon's orbit. Only the lunar module was going to land on the Moon. It meant that only Armstrong and Aldrin had the chance to step on the Moon and not Michael Collins, because the lunar module was supposed to be reattached to the CSM. Without Michael Collins, Armstrong and Aldrin could not have returned safely. Around 8 p.m., the lunar module was going to land on the Moon. Exactly at 8:10 p.m., alarms went off. Neither Armstrong nor Aldrin knew the meaning of this alarm. They asked the mission control what they ought to do next. Mission control tells them to ignore it and keep going. Then they land the lunar module on Moon's surface. But at the height of 150 meters, Neil Armstrong took over the control. He noticed that the lunar module was going to land at a place where huge boulders were strewn about. The landing spot was changed then, and they decided on another spot 4 miles from the predetermined landing spot for the actual landing. At 8:16 p.m., Buzz Aldrin checked the fuel indicator. Only 5% fuel remained. Seeing the low level of fuel, the mission control initiated a countdown. The countdown to decide whether they should land or abort the mission. Now we're at critical fuel state, and that's why the 60-second call is given.
Eagle, 60 seconds.
60 seconds.
And then the 30-second call. Finally, literally at the last minute, with only 30 seconds remaining in this countdown, Neil Armstrong sent a radio message to Earth. The Eagle had successfully landed.
Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed.
Then Neil Armstrong put on his spacesuit, opened the door, and stepped on the Moon. This moment was watched by 650 million people on television. They collected 23 kilograms of rock and dust from the Moon, and they left behind an American flag and a plate with the inscription, "Here, men from the planet Earth first set foot upon the Moon." But then, what about the flag? The flag which was planted on the Moon, why was it fluttering? There is no air on the Moon. There is a simple reason for that, friends. The flag that Armstrong and Aldrin had taken to the Moon was a specially designed flag. Normal flags have one long vertical rod, but there was a horizontal rod in this too, right at the top of the flag, so that the flag would always be extended out. Because everyone working at NASA knew that if a flag is planted on the Moon, it wouldn't flutter due to the lack of wind, so they decided to add a horizontal rod at the top, so that the flag could always be properly visible.